everyone, this is King Prince. Today, I'm here to talk to you about the wonderful world of horror. Creatures from horror movies have always been my favorite creations in cinema. I've always enjoyed monsters and villains because they tend to be the most interesting part of the story. I'm genuinely not sure why I have such a great love for everything horror, but there's truly something about horror that's done right, and a well-crafted monster is enough to unsettle anyone straight to the very core of their being. So today I'm gonna be listing some of the most horrifying creatures ever created by the wonderful world of Creepypasta. And Creepypasta happen to be some of my favorite stories to ever be created in this world. Ever since I was a kid, I've always had a sort of strange fondness and love for creepypastas. I would almost binge almost every Mr. Creepypasta or Creepypasta video I could ever find, and I genuinely fell in love with this genre of the internet. Just to clarify, all of these are in no particular order, and I genuinely would not like to encounter any of these creatures, ever. And I thank Jesus they don't exist. But what I'm gonna mean by creature in Creepypasta is any unnatural entity like that has malintent towards the protagonist or towards the world. Also, if you're up at 3 a.m, please like the video. So, on to the list. And I truly hope you guys find these creatures as horrific as I did. Slenderman. So Slenderman literally had me in my waking hours, genuinely afraid to look in the forests out of fear that I might see a tall, faceless, slender figure. He might take me to who knows where. And I know there's a new Slender film out, and I haven't seen it because I know everyone I says it's terrible. And it's sad because I really love Slenderman. Like, he could really, if he's done right, Slenderman could really truly be one of the most horrific and petrifying creatures on the face of horror. Now, I'm gonna discuss something that's really dark and a very deep topic. And I'm sure many of you have heard of this, but it was something absolutely messed up and unwarranted. I do not promote violence in any sort of manner, and I believe taking a life is wrong. And I believe what happened in the case of the Slender Sappings was absolutely evil and beyond cruel and unforgivable. The gruesome attempted murder of Peyton Lautner by the two girls was driven by fear of the Slender Man, and I think it's something really interesting to speak about because they literally felt so much fear towards Slender Man as if he was a real thing, a real being who would attack their families if they didn't commit such a horrific act. I would say I was genuinely so afraid of the Slender Man that he would somehow appear in my window one day, and I truly wonder if something like that is enough to drive anyone past the point of insanity. It's a good thing the victim survived the stabbing, and I truly hope she's recovering well. On to the next topic. The Rake. Imagine you're in your bed at night at 3 a.m. While your eyes are opening, you notice a creature is sitting at the foot of your bed. He almost sort of looks like a deformed man or a hairless dog. It's still a little fuzzy and the room is dark, and you're not exactly sure what you're seeing at first, but it's sort of like a hairless man, and he's deformed. He begins to turn his head slowly at you, and his eyes are sort of bright like a cat at night or a dog, and his eyes are wide, and in a low voice leads to other awful things that are enough to make your heart stop. I'm not gonna lie, this one genuinely got to me a lot as a kid. It made me so afraid of falling asleep at night. This scenario is genuinely one of the most awful and haunting scenarios to ever be created by the world of Creepypasta. Seriously, fuck this thing. Oh god. I think I'd always want to have a strap by midnight, just in case this thing ever showed up. And you know, if you live near a wooded area, this thing would be your worst nightmare. So sleep comfortably tonight, guys, if you live near a wooded area. The Abandoned by Disney mascot. Now this is genuinely one of my favorite stories to ever be created. I will actually be taking my time somewhat narrating this. So sit back, relax, grab a bag of popcorn. Abandoned by Disney is about a Disneyland-built resort in the Bahamas, and it was said that Disney blew over $30 million on this property and was subsequently abandoned due to unknown and mysterious events. A little backstory. Mowgli's Palace was a controversial undertaking from the start. Disney bought up a ton of high-priced land for the project, and there was actually a scandal surrounding pretty much the entire purchase of this project. The local government claimed eminent domain on people's homes, then turned around and sold the properties to Disney. At one point, a home had just been constructed and was immediately torn down with little to no explanation. The land grabbed by the government was supposedly for some fictional highway project. Knowing full well what was going on, people started to call it Mickey Mouse Highway. Then there was the concept art. A group of stuffed shirts from Disney Company actually held a meeting. They intended to sell everyone on just how lucrative this project was going to be for everyone. When they showed the concept art, this gigantic Indian palace surrounded by jungle, staffed with men and women in loincloths and tribal gear. Well, suffice to say, everyone flipped their shit. We're talking about a large Indian palace, jungle, and loincloths, not only in the center of a relatively wealthy area, but also a somewhat xenophobic area of the southern USA, that is, in North Carolina. It was a questionable mix at that point in history. There was telling of how one member of the crowd tried to storm the stage, but he was quickly subdued by security after he managed to break one of the presentation boards over his knee. Disney took that community and essentially broke it over its knee as well. Their houses were razed, the land was cleared, and there wasn't a damn thing anyone could do or say about it. Now, our story takes place from the perspective of our narrator, who is exploring this abandoned resort of Mowgli's Palace. First off, finding this resort was downright almost impossible. Even relying on the locals was completely no help. Bringing up even the mention of Mowgli's Palace brought sneers and hateful reactions to the people. So he had to rely on an old as hell map, because he learned that corporations can actually ask Google, for example, to remove links, search results, basically for no good reason. If you tried searching for places such as these, you could come out completely empty-handed, with nothing to rely your investigation on. Now, our protagonist, while exploring this abandoned area, has a few odd encounters. The wildlife was left to freely roam without any sort of regard. For the islanders on Emerald Isle, there were rumors that Disney had released their entire aquarium stock into the local waters when they closed, including sharks and other things like snakes. The narrator continues to explore this place and has other incredibly strange encounters. And the strangest of all, carvings of the saying, abandoned by Disney. Now, I wish I could tell you about the awesome stuff I saw inside of the palace. Forgotten statues, abandoned cash registers, a full-fledged secret society of homeless bums, but no. Inside of the building was so stark, so bare that I think actually people might have stole the molding off the walls. Anything that was too big to steal, counters, desks, giant fig trees. They were all resting amid this empty echo chamber that amplified my every step like a slow rat-a-tat of a machine gun. I checked the floor plan and headed to all the locations that might seem in any way interesting. The kitchen was, as you might imagine it, an industrial food prep area with all the appliances in space anyone could ever need, no expenses spared. Every glass surface was broken, every door knocked off its hinges, every metal surface kicked and dented in. The entire place smelled of very old piss. The huge freezer, not even remotely cool now, had row upon row of empty shelf space. There was these hooks that hung from the ceiling, probably for hanging cuts of meat. And as I stood inside for a moment, I noticed they were swinging. Each hook swung in a random direction, but their movements were so slow and small that it was almost impossible to see. I figured it had to be caused by my footsteps, so I stopped for a moment and clutched one in my fist, then carefully let it go. But within seconds it started to swing again. I eventually left this area and went to the bathrooms, which were much in the same state as the rest of this place. Just like the Treasure Island Resort, someone had methodically smashed each porcelain commode with coconuts or other implements. There was about half an inch of rancid, stinking, stagnant water on the floor, so I didn't stay there for very long. I eventually moved on from this area and continued to explore the plenty of other rooms in this resort. But naturally, I didn't have time to look in each one of them. The few I did peer into were similarly wrecked. I didn't expect to find anything there. I thought there was a television or radio in one room, as I think I heard a quiet conversation coming out of one of them. It was like a whisper, like a back and forth between two voices. This is what it sounded like. One voice saying, "I didn't believe it. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Your father told you." I know that sounds ridiculous, but this is only what our narrator is experiencing. As the narrator continues exploring, he eventually encounters a costume room. There's a few mascots in the room, and they're all pretty much touted to. Everything in this room is pretty much beyond the point of decay. Even anything would just touch some mush, even at the slightest touch. Clothing items hanging on hooks in one of these rooms simply disintegrated into moist threads the instant he tries to unhook them, and eventually enters a room full of destroyed old Disney costumes, some just hanging on the wall and lying on the floor. He notices that these are all types of Disney costumes, even native and tribal ones. He even notices what looks on the floor to be a photo-negative version of a Mickey Mouse mascot. It just looked completely wrong. The fur was extremely matted, and he was white where he should have been black, and black where he should have been white. It just didn't make sense. Now, while this person's looking around, they pick up a head of a Donald Duck costume to stage a photo, and the instant he picks it up, a human skull comes crashing out of the suit. It scared the narrator so bad that he turned to leave, but when he turned around, he saw the person, the mascot in the suit, the photo-negative version of Mickey, began to get up. First he started sitting up and began to climb to his feet until he was standing straight up, sizing the man up. And then He begins to speak in a hushed but perverted tone and said to the man in an almost identical Mickey Mouse voice, "Hey, wanna see my head come off?" The creature, or man or whatever, began to claw at his head like a man trying to escape a lion who has him in his jaws, just clawing at it impatiently and frantically, and yellow chunky blood is just gushing out of this person's neck, working at his throat with clumsily clad glove fingers, just digging at it and eventually ripping it off. The narrator turns to run away from this location, and he sees one last carving on the wall saying, "Abandoned by God." I believe this is one of, if not the greatest creepypasta monster reveals to ever be written. I love this story because as a child it felt so realistic to me. I truly believe there was a place called Mowgli's Palace that was actually abandoned because of supernatural events. And when your story is able to do that, I just think like that's truly something to be commended. When the creature awakens in the story, some call the reveal campy and corny, but this reveal was something that felt so expected but so unexpected at the same time, so fitting for the world and so completely unnatural in every single way. And this story literally kept me awake for weeks. It might sound like I'm glazing at this point, but this seriously is one of the scariest creepypastas, in my opinion. One of my favorite additions to the story that makes this story honestly even more scary was a video by Pastra called "The Scariest Creepypasta Ever Made." And I completely agree with him. And he truly put the story in a new light for me. Go check out Pastra's channel and video, because he goes into way more detail about this story than I do here. This video pretty much uses the other two sequels for this story, Room Zero and Corruptus, to piece together the puzzle of the reversed Mickey Mouse costume. So the new suggestion goes as this. Pretty much the reason things went wrong at the park was that weird things would start to happen, such as like weird music playing backward. Park security would report more mascots than they had on payroll. And at some point, an inverted Mickey Mouse costume appeared. It seems like someone accidentally put on that suit and was completely unable to take it off. It seems like this person who put the suit on started to meld with the suit, their skin becoming one with the suit. And some of the lines were very disturbing, such as the person saying, the costume said, "He's unable to take it off. I can't 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 take it off." Oh, I forgot. This is my real head. The costume even seems alive, so much so that the person has to match the costume's breathing to avoid being suffocated. This is honestly what makes this new reimagination so incredibly horrifying. Imagine being that person. You're just a normal person who accidentally did something or put on something you weren't supposed to. And now you're stuck in this claustrophobic nightmare or suit that feels like it's melding with your skin and you can't take it off no matter what you do. At a certain point, you start to imagine the suit or this certain object is part of you, and the person you once were is completely disappeared. The fourth and final creature for tonight, Tommy Taffy, the third parent. creature is so unexplainably horrific and unbelievably cruel towards the inhabitants of the world. This creature is a true devil and an unstoppable nightmare for the characters in the story. Seriously, if you haven't checked this story out, I highly suggest you check out the story narrated by the Dark Somnium. But I highly suggest you avoid this story if you cannot handle extremely upsetting topics. Now, I'm gonna be a little quick on this one because I strongly despise this character. And it's the sort of character that many people are actually familiar with. A truly vicious and unrelenting abuser. A monster unlike any other that a person has to live with and tolerate in their everyday lives. Tommy Taffy is described to be a man, or rather I should say creature, who is explained by narrator Matt as to be in his early 30s, with a short blonde haircut, with very light blue eyes, almost glassy in their appearance, with no dark lines or veins in his eyes. They almost resembled two large blue pools of glowing brilliance. His eyes were wide, as if he was in a constant state of surprise, and he wore a white t-shirt that had the words that read in a red font, "Hi." The narrator explains he notices the oddities of this intruder. His skin was impossibly smooth, a clean pink sheen of absolute perfection. His nose wasn't so much a nose, but it was a nub jutting out of his face. His lips were twisted in a smile, revealing a white strip where his teeth should have been, as if he had on a mouth guard. The narrator describes the day that Tommy appears as simply the worst day of he, his sister, and his family's lives. He pretty much hijacks his family, acting as a completely new parent, to the dismay of the other two parents. Over the time while living with them, Tommy begins to reveal his incredibly strange personality. And the narrator's mother gets incredibly uncomfortable and angry over Tommy's teachings. And Tommy reacts in pretty much the worst way you can ever imagine. I'm not going to continue much more into this story. If you're interested, please check out this story for yourself. But this is where I'm going to end the video. If you enjoyed, please subscribe and like the video. I really am trying with these narrations, and I would appreciate any kind of support.